ASU has no chance to win the Peach Bowl over Texas unless they can find a way to slow down the best freshman in America, Colin Simmons.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Shout out my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, and it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Good news for all of you. I am finally healthy. I missed the last 2 days. We are back. I will have a game plan for the next week for you guys at the end of the episode, so make sure that you tune in. Today, we are going to be talking about players that the Sun Devils need to have a game plan for. There's a handful of guys on offense we're going to start, a handful of guys on defense we're going to start the conversation with. That includes Colin Simmons that we just mentioned. I've got some players on offense, and then at the end of the show, we're going to talk about how ASU could possibly counter them. Now, with that said, it starts with Colin Simmons. Colin Simmons is by far the player I fear the most against Texas. Like, it's not I respect this kid. It's this kid scares the living daylights out of me because he could win this game for Texas by himself. I truly mean that. This is a pretty good freshman class, and I even double-checked the freshmen across America to make sure that I'm not too outlandish when I say that Simmons is the best freshman in America. Outside of Jeremiah Smith, the receiver from Ohio State, I feel pretty confident saying that Simmons is that guy. 8 sacks for Texas and counting as a true freshman, leading the team. He's been a day one starter for this team. And if he wasn't a day one starter, he was a day one key rotational player for the Longhorns. And now at the end of the year, he's arguably their best defender. We're going to talk about the other guy who's arguably their best defender in just a moment. But Simmons, he's terrifying. And he's one of those guys where I don't know what your plan is to slow him down, but I really need to have some idea because he can wreck this game by himself. He's just getting better and better. When I look at the best edge rushers across America, you've got like Abdul Carter from Penn State, James Pierce from Tennessee, Jack Sawyer from Ohio State, handful of other guys. Colin Simmons is in that conversation as an 18, 19-year-old kid. That's insane for him to already be at that point, but he is. So now for Arizona State, they have to go up against this kid. And Arizona State, to their credit, has been a pretty good offensive line this year. But if you listen to the show, you know that I have been critical of the offensive line at times because there is a little more pressure than I would like there to be in the backfield. Now, Sam Leavitt and the offensive scheme are thankfully able to evade a lot of sacks, but if that pressure is dialed up consistently, I don't know how many times you're going to be able to avoid Colin Simmons. And sacks are going to lead to negative yardage, losses of downs, and it's going to put you really far behind the sticks, which, as you would guess, makes it pretty difficult to convert and score points. Colin Simmons, if he gets going in this game, will be the reason ASU loses. So I don't know what their plan is for this guy. I don't know how you slow down this monster. There's no neutralizing him, in my opinion. He's one of those, like, you can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him kind of players. As a true freshman, yeah, UT fans should be very, very excited with what they got in this kid. They should also be excited with Jahdae Barron. And Barron, that's one of my favorite players in the country this year. He's got some safety and corner experience. He's just put him somewhere in the secondary. Let him attack. He's the reigning Jim Thorpe Award winner, which, in case you didn't know, was handed out to the best defensive back in the country. He's been a longtime player for Texas, and he just went off this year. 5 interceptions, 11 pass breakups, 50 tackles. He's got ball hawking skills. He should have had a pick six against Georgia, but he came up a little short. He's just good, man. And ASU is going to have to find a way to attack this secondary without baiting or getting baited, by Jahdae Barron. Because this is a defensive back that can instantly make you pay for throwing at him. And the moment he gets the ball in his hands, there's the ability to score points or get Texas set up in really, really good field position. ASU's having to play this game without Jordan Tyson. And don't get me wrong, even if Tyson was on the field, Jahdae Barron is still a massive obstacle to try and overcome. But you're having to play the Jim Thorpe winner without your best receiver. And to ASU's credit, again, they had a very good passing attack against Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. And Iowa State has one of the best secondaries in college football. So they've shown that they're willing to move the ball around. They have the confidence to do it. And they know that they have the personnel to be able to get the job done. Is this enough to get the job done against not only a really good Texas secondary, but Jahdae Barron by himself? I mean, similar to how Colin Simmons is a game wrecker up front, Barron is a game wrecker in the secondary. You can't be afraid to throw at him, but you've got to be super smart with the way that you orchestrate your passing attack. And I mean, if he is that terrifying for Sam Leavitt that he wants to avoid him, one, I don't blame him. Two, what's your game plan from there? How are you going to attack the secondary depending on how you view Jahdae Barron? Is it straight up like wherever number 7 is, that's a no-fly zone? Or do you just got to have the confidence to be able to come out and say, yeah, it doesn't matter. We're going to throw the football. And if number 7 is there, we'll take our chances. If he's not there, we'll take our chances. I don't know. One guy I want to mention on defense before we start talking about the offensive players, Anthony Hill Jr., leading tackler with 99 tackles, second in sacks with 7.5. He is I don't know why I thought he was a senior. He's only a sophomore. Great news for you, Texas. This kid has been a menace all year long. What is that? 4 forced fumbles. He's got 1 interception, a pass deflection. He just flies all over the field, 6'3", 235. I really did think he was a senior. Well, at least senior and sophomore both start with an S, so I had that much right. He is also equally terrifying with Colin Simmons. I just give Simmons the slight edge here. But Hill is a dangerous, dangerous man. And having those two next to each other is a lot of danger for ASU's offense. Just having those two being able to rush the passer opposite each other is huge for a defense that registered, at least through this point in the year, 41 sacks. And they've got plenty of other sack artists as well. The interior, the defensive line, I know, has a handful of guys that I've been told are really good. Broughton was someone that's been brought to my attention. Trey Moore, he was a NFL draft darling in the offseason. He took a while to get going, but now he's got 3.5 sacks. Maybe he gets going right now. They've got some really good threats for pass rushers, but Simmons and Hill are just in their own league. And then Jahdae Barron in the secondary for a secondary that has 20 interceptions too. It's, as I've said, probably the best defense in college football, if not one of the best defenses in college football. There are 3 guys there who could ruin this game for you. 3 guys who could single-handedly end things for you. And with no offense to Hill and no offense to Barron, Simmons is the guy that I fear the absolute most, offensively or defensively, as the player who will end ASU's season if there is no game plan put up against him. Of course, ASU still has to prepare for the offense, and this dynamic duo of a running game that the Longhorns have, it should definitely have the full attention of Brian Ward and the rest of the defense as they prepare for this game. I'm going to talk to them coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let me talk to you about our friends over at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice and didn't even realize, because that happened to me. And that's why I got myself Rocket Money. I had a lot of subscriptions I didn't even realize I was paying for. There was one of them that I was paying for twice. Not proud to admit that one. But Rocket Money made it easy to track down. I had a personal assistant for my finances, and I was able to save a lot more money going into next year because of it. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spendings, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit in 2025. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, like I said, it's that subscription tracker. To see that there was some stuff that I haven't used in years that I was still paying for. Yeah, I know I'm going to save a lot of money in the long run. And their goals feature, it's something that I've been able to set up and start putting some money aside. You know, something that I've really struggled to do is saving money. And now I've got extra help to do some budgeting. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let's go ahead and talk about some offensive players for Texas that give me quite the scare. And it really comes down to this running back duo. Now, that's not to say there's not weapons elsewhere, because we're still going to talk about them. Don't worry. But the running back duo is what has my undivided attention here. Quintrevian Wisner and Jaydon Blue are monsters. Wisner, 191 carries, 973 yards, and 5 touchdowns on the season. Jaydon Blue, 126 carries, 710 yards, 8 touchdowns on the season. They go nuclear with each other, and they went nuclear against Clemson. Wisner had 15 carries, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. The long was only 22 yards, keep in mind, so he was a chunk play machine. Jaydon Blue, 14 carries, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a 77-yard long, so 13 carries for, what is that, like 69 yards, something like that. Still over 4 yards a carry, and last I checked, 77 yards is a very, very long distance, and that dude is fast. That was a huge play that he was able to rip off against Clemson. One of the staple touchdowns of that game. That duo should have the utmost attention of the defense. And ASU has had a very good run defense this year. And they've done it in all sorts of different ways. One, the interior of the defensive line has been terrific. Something that was pointed out today that I didn't realize, of ASU's defensive tackles who have the most snaps this year. So that's some order of CJ Fight, Blazin Lonowong, Zach Swanson, Jeff Clark, and Jacob Rich-Kongaika. Some order of those 5. None of them are over 300 pounds. I would have lost that bet, especially seeing how they play against the run and just their ability to anchor the inside and force everything out. Phenomenal. But that's going to be put to the test against an NFL offensive line. Are these quote-unquote slide-of-frame defensive tackles going to be ready for the maulers that Texas has? It'll be interesting. And if they are able to do their job, and I believe they will, they've been able to do it all year long. I understand if you look through some of the games, you see 100-yard rushers and everything, but I would tell you to watch those games and understand that the yards, more often than not, were not as important in the grand scheme of things. I don't really know how to explain what I'm trying to explain. Essentially, yeah, you find a handful of 100-yard runners, but I promise you that the run defense plays a lot better than that. Now, if you give up 100 yards to Wisner or Blue, you're going to be in really big trouble. If you give it up to both of them, you're going to lose the game, flat out. But I do trust the interior. We'll see how the edge is able to play. You missed Jahdae Simmons for the first half of the game. He was one of your best edge setters against a run at the nickel. You do have some really good linebackers that I trust with Caleb McCullough, Keyshawn Elliott, Zaire Sviaseu, Jordan Crook, and all of them. I trust them to be able to contain the run, but they're going to need to have their best game of the season against the run because Wisner and Blue, they just showed against Clemson that they can win a game for Texas single-handedly. They could easily do it to ASU as well. They need to be ready for this run game. And don't get me wrong, they can still do some damage through the air. They've got weapons that we'll talk about here in just a second. But to me, if ASU is unable to stop this run and they just can't figure out how to slow down Wisner and Blue, they're just not going to be able to catch up and keep up in this game. They're going to get down early and they're not going to be able to get onto the field because Texas will just play some chew clock. I mean, why wouldn't you give these guys each? They both had 14 carries against Clemson. Why not do it again? Why not do more than that? Why not simplify your offense and just run the heck out of the football on a team that in this scenario just isn't able to get anything done? The game shrinks that much faster. Oh, and these guys can both catch the ball. 70 receptions between these two guys. So they're not one-dimensional. Not one of them is one-dimensional. They're both dual threats as runners and as receivers. So you got that going against you too. How are you going to take on these two guys? Honestly, best case scenario is you contain one of them and the other one just has a day. Similar to with Colin Simmons, how I don't think you can stop him entirely. I don't think you can shut down both of these running backs. I don't even think it's a pick your poison kind of thing. I think it's just okay, we scheme best up against this guy. Let's see if it works. Okay, it did. Perfect. Now we're just going to try and contain the other guy or, vice versa. We'll see. But these running backs present a massive challenge for ASU. They do have pass catchers, and I don't want to ignore them. Isaiah Bond, he was dealing with, I want to say, a hamstring injury. He didn't play against Clemson. It'll obviously have been a bit of time since then. I don't know his health status. If somebody does, let me know. I am under the assumption that he's going to play because it wasn't a season-ending injury. He's had time to heal, and you're now in the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. I imagine he's going to be back sooner rather than later. He is the deep threat, and he's arguably their number one receiver. Now, if he doesn't play, Matthew Golden is their leading receiver in terms of yards. He also might just be their number one receiver, period. So between those two at receiver, and then Gunnar Helm is a stud tight end. 55 catches, 688 yards, 6 touchdowns this year. They've got the guys to be able to do it through the air. This run game is going to set all of that up. If you are able to shrink the running game, I think you can handle their passing attack, but it's just a very well-balanced offense. And it's just that run game, man. That run game offensively will be what separates this game from ASU versus Texas. If you can't stop Colin Simmons, he's going to ruin this game for you. If you can't stop this running back duo, they're going to ruin this game for you. I also want to mention really quick, they have a pretty darn good offensive line, especially at the tackle spots. I've heard mixed reviews for the interior from Texas fans. Yes, I have spoken with a lot of Texas fans. I've been on a handful of Texas podcasts lately. So if you want to hear more, check those out on my Twitter. I share the links for all that good stuff. What I do know, though, for sure, what I knew previously and what I have gathered from other Texas people I've talked to is that tackle duo of Kelvin Banks and Cameron Williams is just as good as advertised. Kelvin Banks won the Outland Trophy, and Cameron Williams is very, very quickly becoming a superstar at right tackle, and he's only got more time to get better and better. ASU has been an okay team rushing the passer. They get more pressures than they do sacks. I don't know what your plan is to get pressure on this offensive line off the edge. I just don't know that ASU will be able to do anything. One of the things I gathered, because you can see on the box score that they have allowed 30 sacks and Quinn Ewers has taken 24 of those sacks. What was told to me, again, by Texas fans, is that Ewers, to kind of paraphrase what was told to me, essentially like will kind of slide into sacks instead of like trying to go super off script or anything, just kind of that logic of live to fight another down, which is why his sack numbers are significantly higher than Arch Manning, who only took 6 in, I think, 3 or 4 starts this year. So if ASU is able to generate pressure that way, they could get some sacks, but who knows? All I know is 30 sacks for Texas is very deceptive, and I am not counting on ASU to get 5 or 6 sacks in this game. I would love if they could just find a way to slow down this running game and then figure out the passing game later. I do have some ideas for how ASU can counter some of these players, whether it's an individual or a scheme, or maybe even a little bit of luck. That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let me talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel now. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's not too late to get in on the NFL action, even as the regular season is coming to a close and the playoffs are around the corner. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players are going to score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. All of it's a ton of fun. That score touchdown thing, that's that anytime touchdown. Oh, that's my favorite. I love player props. Anytime touchdowns, over, under receiving yards, passing yards, rushing yards, all of that good stuff. You can check out all of that and more from FanDuel. They also got college football. They've got basketball and everything that you're looking for right now. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. One more time, I appreciate all of you for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day, and a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let's come up with some rough game plans here. And emphasis on rough. This will be something that I tackle a little more down the road, which I will outline at the end of the show, what the roadmap is for the next week's worth of content. Just off the top of my head, we're going to talk about the main 3 players / running back duo I talked about, and then kind of everything else. Here's a really basic counter. What do you do for Colin Simmons? I've just gotten my notes, whatever it takes. I stand firm. Simmons will be the reason you lose this game if you do not find a way to slow him down. So I don't care if that's double teams. I don't care if there's times you triple team him. I don't care if it takes tight end chips. I don't care if you need to directly move your offense away from where he is on the field. I may be in the minority of having this big of a fear of Colin Simmons, but I do. And that is a player that even as a true freshman has the potential to win the game for Texas and cause ASU to lose the game. By himself, he could be that dynamic. I already think he's one of the best edge rushers in college football. And when a bunch of these guys that are going to the NFL this offseason and the draft are gone, we're going to go into next year with a debate as to whether or not Simmons is the best edge rusher in college football. I just don't know how many you stack up against him. So how do you stop him? I don't care. Whatever you got to do. Say a prayer or use some voodoo magic. Someone get a voodoo doll and just like poke him in the back of the leg or something so he gets a cramp and then he's just not running as hard. I don't know. Maybe put rollerblades on his cleats so he's sliding around. Whatever you got to do, because this guy will cause you to lose game. Jahdae Barron, how does ASU counter? It's going to be about creativity with the passing game. There's not a single player that, one, I think can beat Jahdae by himself, and two, that Texas will put Jahdae on to eliminate them from the game plan. They're going to have Barron just roaming around the secondary, playing on the boundary, playing inside, playing deep, wherever they want to put him, and just have him do his thing. So some plays he'll be man-to-man, and some plays he'll be in the box, and who knows? If I'm Texas, I just let him do whatever. I give him the scheme, and I say, here you go. You're really good at your job. You're going to be a future first-round draft pick in the NFL, a future starter. Here's what you're going to do. So if you're ASU, first and foremost, identify where number 7 is on the defense in that secondary. Figure out where he is, and then you just need to find creativity in your schemes to open guys up. There's going to be times where guys just flat out can't get open with their route running alone. You need to be able to have some plays in your playbook that can create the separation for you. And that's going to be the best way for you to attack the secondary and to go after Jahdae Barron, is by having some kind of game script that makes it an easier passing game. It's just the way it has to be. And bottom line, do not force the ball his way. That just absolutely cannot be any part of your game plan, is to force the ball at Barron, or you're going to lose and he's going to make you pay for it. The running back duo, how do you counter? I got 3 steps. Number 1, set the edge. I do trust the interior. You need to make sure that your edge rushers and your defensive backs, who we'll talk about more in a moment, are up to the task of playing against this dynamic run game. So the edge has to be set. Number 2, you got to back up the interior of the defensive line. I mentioned earlier I trust them, but there's no denying this is going to be a huge test for them. I'm not of the belief that because they're under 300 pounds, they're instantly outmatched, but there's going to be a bit of a size difference. So make sure that you're backing those guys up. I don't know if that means trusting the perimeter to the edge defenders and your DBs and having the linebackers help stack the middle, but just find a way to make sure, especially early on, if you find out, hey, the interior defensive line, they just can't hold their own. If that happens, then you just need to find a way to back them up. Number 3, have those DBs ready to run blitz. I'm not ready to die on this hill just yet. That may change between now and later. But I do think that if you eliminate the run game enough, you can beat Texas. I think Texas's path to a win over ASU is easier by running the football than it is passing the football. So you gotta find ways to be creative and slow this run game down. And that means your DBs, your safeties, your corners, your nickels, whoever, they better be ready to run blitz. They better be ready to get into the backfield and help set the edge. That's one of the things that Jahdae Simmons is so great at. And it's one of the reasons why having him out for the first half could be a really big difference maker in this game. They need to have him back there. If he's not back there, I don't know. It's just, it's a very, very interesting situation that ASU is finding themselves in. How's the rest of the crew going to stack up? Montana Warren has a huge opportunity here. It sounds like he's going to be the replacement for Jahdae Simmons in the first half. Is he ready to take over Simmons' role as that guy on the perimeter who sets the edge against a run? Right now, I'm not worried about coverage. I'm worried about how you slow down this run game. So Javen Robinson, Keith Abney, and Xavion Alford and Miles Rouser and everybody else in that secondary who has a pivotal role, I hope you guys are ready to play run defense. I hope you're ready to play run defense. Everything else on the offense, it really just comes down to containing the big play. Because they can move it through the air. There's no question about that. They have got the weapons to move it through the air. And Quinn Ewers, pretty darn good quarterback. He is more than capable of winning a national title for Texas. And with the weapons at his disposal, with the defense that's making life easier for him, and an offensive line that does their job, he could not be placed in a better situation to win. Texas is loaded. They've got a lot of things that are going their way. But I promise you, ASU will not win this football game unless they have counters for these guys. Good news, I do think ASU can counter some of these issues. Will they counter all of them? Probably not at the same time, but if you can walk away slowing down Colin Simmons, slowing down the run game, and avoiding Barron, I think there's a chance for you to win. But you've got to be able to find a way to perform most of these, or at least find ways to mask up areas you can't win. Like if Colin Simmons dominates you, well, then hopefully you can get the ball out quick and just find ways to get those chunk yards after the catch or whatever. If the running backs are killing you, well, maybe you just find a way to take away the passing game. I don't know. These are the players and the positions that will ruin this game for ASU. There's a brief outline for how to stop them, slow them down, and keep ASU in this football game. Who are you worried about the most? Is it Colin Simmons? Is it somebody else that I didn't even mention on this show? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrats36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you get the update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in to make us your first listen of the day. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. And before I forget, horns down for the Longhorn fans in here. All right, as promised, I've got an outline for you guys for the next week worth of content. So today, obviously, was the players that ASU must be on guard for. Tomorrow, we are going to be taking a look at X factors to beat Texas. That's going to include players, that's going to include coaches, that's going to include schemes, and a little bit more. Monday will be our crossover edition of Locked On Sun Devils with Locked On Longhorns. That's going to be a really fun one. It should be Monday. If it's not Monday, that will be on Tuesday. And if that ends up being on Tuesday, then we will have our game day preview available to you then. Game day preview, for those of you who have not been here before, we're going to go through players on offense and defense to watch, some bold predictions, a final score, and a little bit more as well. There's also a chance that I will be able to have that content of who and what ASU should look out for according to Texas fans. I'm going to start posting polls over the weekend, both on Twitter and YouTube. So Texas fans, vote on those polls if you're interested. If I get enough interaction, I'll be able to make another podcast based off of those results. Wednesday is game day. I will not have anything. I will be at the game. If you see me, come over, say, hey, there's a chance I do a live stream later. Don't count on it. I'm going to be in Atlanta. Thursday, I'll be home. We will be live, if we don't go live on Thursday. I'll also have a game recap, the good, the bad, takeaways, game balls if we win, what needs improvement if we lose. Friday is going to be dependent on the Peach Bowl, the result. So don't worry. We're going to be here. Subscribe and turn on notifications. You'll get the update for all of that good stuff. But we'll be back again tomorrow and moving forward. I'll catch you guys then. And until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.